Good morning, guys. Hope you're doing well. Today I want to talk about my top 10 best pieces of advice on mental health. So, the first piece of advice I have is be your own biggest supporter. So often we as individuals are very critical of ourselves and we only, focus on the negatives, you know, of what we're not and what we're not doing and how successful we're not or what we're missing out, maybe if we're single, you know, and biologically, scientifically, our brain has been trained for that, for survival and always preparing for the worst. But that's where you have to train your mind to look at all the good that is in your life. If you have friends, you have family, you have food on the table, a decent job, clean water, all these things that, maybe you take for granted. Remember to view those blessings and to think about those blessings and be thankful for those blessings. Um, and then, for the improvement you're trying to make, give yourself, daps or props for doing that. If you're trying to get in better shape and you're going to the gym 3 times a week, you know, give yourself, be proud of yourself for that. And the second thing I would say is write down slash speak out any anxiety thoughts in your head. I think being able to take whatever maybe negativity or anxiety or whatever is going on in your head and being able to, write it out or speak it out, in a therapy session or whatever, like being able to take it out of your head and onto something concrete, for me, works really well. Um, it kind of just sometimes by putting it out on pen and paper or speaking it out, you know, later, even a couple hours later, reflect on it, you realize how irrational you're being. Um, I'll give an example. One time, I had texted someone and they didn't respond, and so I started getting into a lot of anxious thoughts about, oh, they hate me, I must have done something, and I actually ended up running into the person 3 days later, and they were literally like, oh my god, I was in a meeting and I totally forgot to respond to your text. Let's get dinner, this weekend. And so, a lot of the times you have to realize, the anxiety you're feeling, you're manifesting that yourself, right? I felt because they didn't respond that, oh, they hate me, right? And we don't know all the variables. That's just me putting that. And then when I go and see them, I realize, um, there were external variables out of my control. They were in a work meeting when they received the text and just forgot after the work meeting ended. Um, the third thing I would say is if you're going through a trying time, let yourself feel that for some time. You know, I think a lot of people try to act like it's not bothering them. That's impossible. I think it's important if, you know, you have a death, you have a breakup, whatever, that you feel those feelings, express your emotions, how you're doing, talk to people about how you're feeling. Um, and then I think after some time period, and it's different for everybody, you know, um, with breakups, for example, depending on, it probably depends on how long you were together. Um, but, you know, say you give yourself 4 to 6 months to work on it. After that period, start challenging your brain to get out of that cycle. I think one of the things that people with mental health issues, I think can relate with is once you begin a negativity cycle, you kind of continue to remain in it. Um, and I think it's important to challenge your brain to start seeing the good, seeing the progress, doing the things you like, seeing friends. Maybe each day write down one thing you were grateful for from the day. Um, and I think, like, obviously with something like a death, I think that hurt never goes away. It's just over time you get better with, you know, dealing with it. And so sometimes things take time. I would also recommend listing things you're hopeful for, you know, maybe even in the calendar of, like, putting down travel plans where you'll visit friends, or, planning to do, a group activity with friends that live in the same area. Always remain hopeful. It's when we lose our hope that things really get bad, with our mental health. Um, for this one, again, I am not a mental health professional or doctor, but if you don't have any circumstance to, that would, put you in a bad mental health state, like, I guess going off the last example, you're not coming off a death, you're not coming off a breakup, like, your life is generally decently good, um, but you're not doing well. I guess whenever it's not circumstantial based, I think you might have a medical issue going on. And I think, you know, anytime like a friend of mine has a decently good life and nothing's really gone on negative events wise or circumstance wise, yet they're struggling, it may just be, a biological issue. Um, just something to think about. The fifth thing I would say is stop comparing yourselves to others. I mean, I think the quote, what is it? Comparison is the thief of joy, or something like that. I mean, so often we're unhappy because we're comparing ourselves to other people. Your journey is your journey. No one's had your cards. And so comparing your cards to someone else's cards is just dumb, as they don't have the same, cards that they were dealt as you do. My main thing is, I think you should be comparing yourself to yourself from previous years. So from 2 years ago, from 1 year ago, from 6 months ago. And I think as long as you're making progress, that's good. And I think on this point, realize, like, it's about internal happiness. You know, I think so often people are focused on what society has taught us, right? I think of, like, I can think of a friend of mine who's a teacher, um, maybe making, 50K a year, and he's very happy. And I can think of another friend of mine who's making, over 100, probably 110K, in the financial industry, and he's just stressed out, not happy, not fulfilled, and only the individuals can realize, like, if making money is what makes you happy, then do it. But if, having good work life balance, if being able to go to your kids' softball games, or being on a adult sports league basketball team is important to you, then you probably shouldn't be working in an industry that doesn't allow you to do those things. I think the sixth thing I would say is cut out negative people or negative things. Um, Negativity, while you might not realize it, that energy has an effect on people. And it will affect you. Um, and, people that are not supportive or are bringing you down or bringing drama, That's stuff you're having to constantly address, and that's going to put an effect on your mental health. I think the seventh thing, and it's kind of tough for people that have bad mental health states, but realize you're in control, right? If there are changes that need to be made in your life, you can make those changes. It's going to be hard, you know, um, but you are ultimately the author of your life in terms of the choices you make day to day. And, you know, the eighth thing I would say is realize it's a lifelong battle. I think a lot of people think, oh, if I, take a medication, I'm good. Or if I go to therapy, I'm good. Mental health is a lifelong journey, just like physical health. And that means it's an everyday process, and you know, it will always be a part of your journey. Um, so the important thing is to create an environment where you're staying consistent through the good times and the bad times to make sure that you're good. Whether that's therapy, whether that's journaling, whether that's exercising, multiple times a week, whether that's being in a support group. Create the environment that makes you successful. And I think with that, I would say as time goes on, you get better with dealing with it. You become more aware of, say, your triggers, and, you know, being smarter about, as soon as something happens, this is what I need to do. The ninth thing I would say is do what you need. Ultimately, kind of like the realize you're in control advice. The tough thing about all of this mental health stuff is it's all on you. It's really, you have to have the self-awareness to know what you need, what your body needs. So when I say things like, if you feel like you're in a toxic work environment, right? Only you know that, right? A friend won't necessarily, you might be able to tell them, but like a friend isn't going to know the effect of how toxic it is. Only you would. And so make that change, do what you need to do. Again, it's going to be tough, but it's better to leave a toxic environment than stay in a toxic environment. And then finally, I would just say educate yourself. Learn about the different forms of mental health. By being bipolar, being, having anxiety, having depression, having an eating disorder. What are the symptoms of these? What are the severities of each of these? For me, and I think my generation, I didn't even hear about the term mental health until like I was a junior in college. I was like 20 or 21. I didn't learn about it in high school. And I think it's important, if you educate yourself to be like, oh, like one of my friends got um, diagnosed with a learning disability in his, as an adult. And had he had the knowledge of like what are the symptoms or the signs of a learning disability, um, like ADHD or something like that, I think he might have been able to recognize at a younger age, oh, this is something that all of these sound very familiar. So yeah, that's my um, list of 10. Um, oh, and one other thing, I guess it'll be an addition. You know, I think it goes with the stop comparing yourself to others, like the number 5. Judgment is always going to be a part of your life, no matter what you're doing. You could be successful and people say, oh, he or she was handed that success or they got lucky or whatever. You could be a failure and people would say, you know, oh, we always knew, he or she didn't have it in them or whatever. They'll realize that no matter what happens, people are always going to judge you. So one thing you have to tune out is worrying about people's judgment. Control what you control, and that's just you, your thoughts, your actions, your choices every day, and I think you'll be good. If there's something that you guys have as a piece of advice that I didn't mention here, please feel free to message me or comment. I'm happy to do a part two and add some more. Thank you guys.